taking photos.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us again in illuminating the core of the feminine force within you. So welcome. Today we're talking about guilt. And this is something that sometimes we don't know, especially mama guilt. We haven't experienced until we actually have a child. But speak to any mother, and every mother on the planet, I'm sure, understands what mama guilt is. And I feel personally that guilt is something that really sucks our energy and is not helpful. Like, I've never been able to see anything helpful about feeling guilty. However, trying to overcome it and step out of that feeling, that's where the skill is, right? So we're having this conversation, and I'm so excited to be sharing it with Aly today and hearing her views on guilt and mama guilt. Hi, Aly. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much. Yeah, great to be here. It's it's something that comes up with my clients daily. In fact, because we were discussing that we were going to be talking about this today, it's really interesting. 2 of my client sessions today, guilt came up. Yeah. And not only is it a lower vibrational emotion, but if you look at Dr. David Orr Hawkins and his map of consciousness, anybody who's interested in that, look it up. And it's very interesting because he has, the different frequencies of emotions, and up the top is like love. And then as you get down the bottom, you have the lower vibrational, and guilt is right down there at the bottom. And you're right, it's not an emotion that serves us in any shape or form, right? But why is it? So in my opinion, it shows up in motherhood a lot clearer, right? It really kind of comes to the fore. But I believe that's only because it's been lurking in the background, even before we become moms. It just kind of gets heightened during that time. And there's a lot of guilt around self-care. You hear people say if they sit in the couch for 5 minutes, or if they take a break at work, or if they take time for themselves in any shape or form, they feel guilty. We live in a society that is moving too fast, that has an absolute obsession with busyness. Like, when you meet someone, how are you? I'm so busy. How are you? Like, it's really interesting because there was a lady who I met the other night, and she was emailing me yesterday, and she was trying to organize a meeting between 3 of us. And she actually said in the email, I'm not using the word busy. And it was something that she was very conscious of not doing. So she was trying to, I can't remember the word she used. Let me try and think now. But what she said is popular. That's what she said. She said such is very popular at the moment, but I'm trying to, get in contact with her, and we'll arrange. And we just did, we did one of these the other day, and we talked about the fact that your word is your wand. And, it's interesting, since we did that session together, since we had that chat, I have been using, not using trigger. I've been using activated, and it has made all the difference with me and my clients. For that. But guilt is another subject that has to be addressed. And I'll tell you why it's really important to address it, because it's a blind spot for most people. It's a big, big, big blind spot. It's something that we're not really willing to see. And because we're not willing to see it, we'll do anything to avoid it, right? Because we sit, and when we're present, just present for any length of time, guilt emerges. And so instead of being with it, because that's really the key, you've got to feel to heal, right? Instead of being with it, we distract. And that's really what it comes down to. We're constantly distracting. And it's being inquiring, right? Going inside and going, what is it about taking time for myself that makes me feel so bad? Why do I feel guilty? And it's a physical feeling for me.
Yes.
It's in my body, it lives. It's like I sit down. I sat down yesterday evening, having worked all day, driven James, done whatever we do with kids, and they're on their summer holidays now. I also had a client at 9 o'clock at night because she's in India, right? And they're the next day, you in Australia. And I sat down after that for half an hour after being that busy all day and felt guilty. Like the first thing was like, is there anything I have to do? Is there anything I'm not doing? Now that's not normal and it's not right and it's not healthy, right? So this is a topic that is multifactorial. It's multifaceted. It's not simplistic. I don't think we can have a conversation here today and go, it's this, this, and this, and this is the causes. I think it's definitely an indoctrination issue. I think it's societal. I think we live with this kind of energy of having to show up and portray a certain way of being to make ourselves acceptable to fit into society the way it is today, right? Or another big thing that has come up for me personally, and I know with a lot of my clients, is the idea that we have to work really, really hard to get somewhere. Now, this is a really toxic trait that runs through societies. And you hear people say it all the time. Oh, but he's an entrepreneur and he has to work every hour God sends, right? He works, he never comes home to the kids because he's an entrepreneur. And I look at the stories attached to that. It means that if you want to be an entrepreneur and you're not working every hour God sends and giving 18 hours a day, you're not a successful real entrepreneur. Like, look at the mentality and the mindset that starts to infuse. So there's no sense of balance. We shouldn't, and we have this, a lot of us have a mindset that we don't deserve something unless it's come through blood, sweat, and tears. You know, if it doesn't come and we in blood, sweat, and tears, we're not worthy of it.
Money doesn't grow on trees, right? That's what I was told as a kid. Money doesn't grow on trees.
Constantly, like not just once or twice. It's constant. And, you know, we are the sum total of our belief systems, of everything we've been exposed to in our life to date. That's what we are. That's how we're experiencing the world. So unless there's a real willingness, like I'm not talking about a little bit of willingness, like there has to be a real willingness from within us to go, I really want to see my blind spots, because I don't know anybody who's willing to see their blind spots who doesn't go through a super uncomfortable period, right? Because there's a reason they're called blind spots. You know, we're about to see something that we would rather not see about ourselves, right? That's why they're blind spots, because there were amazing things that were missing. You know, we wouldn't be trying so hard not to see them. So they're blind spots. And we all have so many blind spots. We have blind spots in relationships, at work, how we see the world, how we judge people. But just checking in with yourself and asking yourself, do I make excuses for myself when I want to take time? So let me give you an example of what this could look like, right? So you're saying to a friend, a partner, a spouse, I'm going to get a massage next week because my neck is really sore, or because I hurt my back, or because blah, blah, blah. So it's interesting that we set the story up with a reason to go and take time for ourselves, right? Like a second a few weeks ago, I'm going on a retreat, you know, she's got kids or whatever. And I would never ask someone why. I'd be like, oh my gosh, have an amazing time. And without me saying any of that, she goes, oh, well, the reason now that my husband is letting me take these 3 days. And she went into this big story. And I said to her, I'm not asking you why you're going. I'm saying go have fun, have an amazing time. But it's interesting because I just said to her, now, what was it about that you felt the need to tell the story? And she said, because everybody else has gone, oh, really? So your husband is minding the kids for the weekend. Oh, what does he have to say about that? So do you see the way we immediately have our defenses up and we have our excuses ready because we're so afraid of other people's judgments. We're so afraid of what other people will think. Like, you're going away for 3 days. Amazing. And the reason people are usually questioning it is because they'd love to be doing that as well, right? And because they either don't have the balls or the courage or whatever is going on in their life, they have to make themselves right by saying, oh, do you really think that's a good idea? Gosh, isn't that well, you going away for 3 days with 2 or 3 kids? Oh gosh, wouldn't it be lovely to be able to go for 3 days? Because they're not doing it. And we see that happen in so many different aspects of our life. It's like when we tell somebody we have this amazing idea and it triggers them or activates them, as you would say, or it activates them and they come back with a story of, oh, well, 15 people have done that, before, and it didn't work for them. So this is where we have got to turn our attention inwards, open up our heart center, and really sit in this uncomfortable, swampy kind of feeling, I call it, because I think those feelings are a little muddy and sticky for us to sit in, right? Like they're not super comfortable.
Yeah.
But the work is being in that moment, and when we sit to have a cup of tea, allowing it to arise. Like I have a meditation I do where I encourage people to allow the emotion to arise, accept it for what it is, and then allow it to pass. That sounds super simple, right? Doesn't it?
But it works. It works. It's what I do.
It's so incredibly simple. Now go and sit. I encourage people, go and sit. And as that uncomfortableness starts to arise, it's actually not that easy to do. It sounds simple, but it's not that easy to do because we're so conditioned to run. We're so conditioned to distract ourselves. So instead of sitting in that moment and allowing it to arise and really being with it in your full presence, there's a big, big difference, like really fully being with it, right? That's where the work is. And that's where we distract ourselves. That's where we run from ourselves. And how have you coped? You've got older kids.
Yes.
So how have you coped with mommy guilt through those years?
I can remember with my 3 older children, I used to work and I had a business, and I used to always set myself up so that I was there for them. Like I was always trying to make things right and working so that, I could work, but I didn't feel bad about working. So I'd leave early in the morning. My partner would get them ready for school, but I would always make sure I was there every afternoon when they came home from school. And I can remember, like, I was always trying to think about the ways that I could do what I wanted to do or needed to do, and not and be a good mum, right? Be a good mum. And I remember I used to actually feel quite a lot of guilt back then for working. And yet I did so much stuff with them. Like I was so we used to play games at night. Like, and it's so funny how our mind, like we don't see all the things we do. We don't acknowledge and validate all the things we do. We only look at the things we don't do. I'm at work. We don't go, wow, like I actually am with my kids and I love my kids and we do all this together. But the one thing that I used to focus on was the fact that I'd go to work. And that was what would cause me guilt. And as I started to really learn about myself more and feel my feelings, because when you can feel guilt in your body, it doesn't feel good it just didn't feel good. And I started to realize that if I started to feel guilty, it was just taking me down this path of like, where was it going to? Like, if I felt guilty about something, then I just had to change it. I just got to change it. There's no point in feeling guilty and then going all the way down that path and just beating myself up about it, self-flagellation for years after years after years. And as I started to really look at the thing that I used to call guilt, I realized that guilt was just a projection of me not feeling good enough. And when I started to really realize that, like even now, I don't actually know that I felt guilt for a long time, because I just got into the habit of, if there was a guilt feeling, it was like I would go, oh, okay, it's not about the guilt. It's because I'm not feeling good enough. I feel like I'm actually not doing enough. I feel like, and I go, well, where's that come from? And like you said, I'm questioning it, like, because I have a very, my mum and my grandfather, really hard workers, money doesn't grow on tree, and like, so you couldn't be seen to be sitting around. And my mum had this florist shop. So I grew up in this florist shop, and at busy times of the year, she'd work 24/7 and, and she'd be like, if we were sitting down when she'd be like, what are you doing? Get up, put a label on these flowers, spray those flowers, it's like, so there was always this like pressure to move. And now I actually consciously remind myself to sit during the day and just have a cup of tea and look at the trees, because I know that by doing that for myself, my emotions process See, the emotional stimulation that we get from our world and from the engagements that we have, if we don't just sit for a while, we can't actually process them. So if I go to the shops and like you go shopping and you come home and you're like, oh, like there's agitation in your body because you've been stimulated, you've been going, I make sure that I just sit down, even just for 5 or 10 minutes, and just come back into myself. Because often what we do is we move from one activity to the next, to the next, to the next, and our emotions don't get a chance to process. Someone once said to me that relaxation is the highest form of meditation. And I tend to agree, because I actually think it really is hard to just give yourself permission to relax. But with guilt, I would strongly encourage you to just see, oh, here's some guilt coming up. Oh, that's interesting. Like, why wouldn't I feel guilty? Because I have these stories, because I have this background, because, I'm a mum trying to do the best I can do in a crazy, chaotic world. Why wouldn't I feel guilty? And then validating yourself and being, it's okay, I can feel guilty for a little bit and just acknowledge the feeling. But then it's like, okay, well, it's actually because I'm not feeling good enough, or it's because, I think I could do a better job, or maybe because I'm not in alignment with what I'm doing. Like, I actually am doing something that I really don't feel good about. So my investigation gives me the capacity then to go, okay, what do I need to do to build my value, like to make myself feel worthy? And that might be just, coming in and being with my inner child. It might be just really loving myself, or loving somebody else, so I can fill my body up with love, so I can feel the feeling. I don't want to think I'm good enough, because the thinking doesn't help me. I actually have to feel it in my body. So some of the things that help me feel value is when I actually just sit and even write down some of my accomplishments, some of my accomplishments for the day. I start to go, wow, like that's actually, I've really done a good job today. Like, so I can feel it in my body, and that helps me with not feeling good enough. And then it also, when I'm looking in doing that investigation, I'm looking around, what is it that I'm doing that doesn't serve me? What am I trying to hold together because I feel obligated, or I'm people pleasing? Like when I used to feel that guilt, I was also the sort of person that would say yes to everything at the school. Like, oh, yes, I'll be on that committee. Yes, I'll be on that. And I get on these committees and I would feel so overwhelmed, and I would resent myself. I would be really resentful because I was a people pleaser. And so I realized as soon as I stopped people pleasing, it was like I took all these things off my plate and I could start making conscious decisions. And then if I felt good, it was like, oh, is there somewhere that I need to actually be more conscious about what I'm doing in my life? So, so using guilt for me, it was like using guilt as a red flag. There's something that I need to look at in my life, and also using guilt to look for what's actually underneath it, and then meeting that emotional need. That was how I started to deal with it. But
and it's interesting. I'm a recovering people pleaser myself, which, we slip back into, and noticing when we slip back into the people pleasing mode, because you said something there which kind of stood out to me. You said always trying to make things right, and then you said being a good mom. Yes. Now it's interesting the stories that we carry, right? What does being a good mom mean? What does that even mean? Because I know so many people who are at home all day, right, but they're not present at all. They're not.
But it's a belief. That's a belief. I remember when my youngest daughter was a baby, I went to this parenting course, and I discovered that I held a belief that if I didn't do this right, if I didn't do mumming right in this moment, that my daughter would just be a total, her whole life would be stuffed up. And I had my older 3 kids, and I went through mumming them the whole time with this unconscious belief that if I didn't get this right, if I didn't deal with their behavior right, if I didn't say the right words, if I didn't feed them right, then they would just be stuffed up, and it would be all my fault. And this was I didn't even know I held this belief, right? And when I let go of that belief, because in honesty, there are so many influences on our children, including their own temperament. If I'm loving, and if I'm connected, and if I'm there for them, there are so many other things that are going to come into their life and create the life that they're going to have. I am not the one person that's going to be, it depends on, letting go of that belief.
I've worked with so many people through the years, and years ago when James was a baby, I did 0 to toddler shows. I worked with all of these experts, and I heard from so many moms, and I heard from hundreds of moms, right, in Ireland. They used to email me, and some moms would say, oh, I feel so guilty because I'm working all the time, and I feel guilty that I have to work, and that's a belief system, right? And then other moms would say to me, I have 3 or 4 kids, and I don't feel like I'm present ever with the kids. I feel very overwhelmed. I feel like I'm constantly running from one thing to the other. And I feel bad because I can't be fully present with them, right? Because everybody has a different story going on. And sometimes, when we're in that mode, we feel like we have to have the house clean, and we have to have all the dinners cooked, and we have to have everything else perfect. And so there is no right way. That's what I figured. After all the years of bringing in all the experts and doing everything, there's no right way. There's your way. And as long as you're present more often than not, which, let's face it, is a really difficult thing to do in this world a lot of the time. As long as you're having moments of connection, as long as you're remembering to just be sometimes and do things that are fun and that make you alive, which how many people in this world do things even on a weekly basis that bring joy and fun and laughter into their life? How many? So few people, and I'm including you, by the way, because it's something that I'm not like lecturing or pointing fingers or anything. I mean, this is a journey that is evolving for me moment by moment, day by day, week by week as a mom, like navigating the last 2 years and thinking, oh my God, all my problems have been solved. I'm homeschooling James. He's at home with me all the time. And, we have this great rhythm going, and it was working well for a few months. And then things started to shift and change again, and people started to go back out into the world, and James is home with me all the time. And even though he has a soccer, he's missing being with friends. And, so life is always changing. And the one thing we've got to be is malleable, not rigid in how we see things, because it's that rigidity and that control that leads to more and more suffering. So like, I have to be open now to a new way of being, a new way of becoming. He's starting a new smaller school in September because I feel that's what we need. But that's going to take adjustment on lots of different levels for many reasons. But being in that kind of energy of adaptability is really what we need, in my opinion, as beings, because a lot of our problems come when we get stuck. Like when James was a baby, I read a book that was super. I'm not going to mention the author's name because I wouldn't do that. But anyway, it's a very strict book on how to feed your baby. Anyway, it was super stressful. I nearly had a nervous breakdown. And then I found out that the woman that wrote it wasn't even a mother. And I was like, oh my gosh. It just, writing a book on how to parent when you're not a parent, like I have certain belief systems, and they're very personal. It's like I'm in recovery from addiction 7 years. Anybody who I ever talked to during my recovery process was someone who had been in addiction themselves, because they know what you're talking about. I remember meeting a couple of people during my time when I was trying to get sober who had never even had a drink. And I'm like, with the greatest of respect, probably not my combination here, because they're more lecturing you, right? What you should be doing. And you just kind of, to really understand addiction, I think you have to have been through it. I think the best teachers in this world, I don't care about your PhDs. I don't care about how many. I mean, look, we can all have 50,000 certificates on the wall, right? Like, for me, it's not about the millions of different things. It comes through life experience. It comes through wisdom. It comes through compassion. It comes through living a heart-centered life. And I just think when we can be in community and in compassion as parents and as women, amazing things happen. Like amazing things happen. Like I remember being in a mom and baby meeting, and it was James was probably just before you were about to crawl, so there was babies at different ages. Some were crawling, some were sitting up or whatever. And I'm kind of looking at all these babies thinking, and I just burst out crying. I had postpartum depression anyway. I burst out crying, and I said to the other moms, "Oh my God, all your babies seem to be doing blah 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 blah." And I just don't even know. I didn't even know what he's supposed to be doing at this age, and I just felt so overwhelmed, right? And in that moment, these other moms went, "Actually, my child's not doing that either, or my child's actually not doing this, and this is the reality of what's going on." And I'm like, "Why the acting then? Why are we going into the groups and the pretending, right? And this is not a judgment, by the way, do you know what I mean? Because it was so beautiful to bear witness to the walls coming down, the real connection happening between women. And in that moment of time, the support that I got that day is something I will never forget, because it's almost like my breakdown caused other women in that group to also be able to open up, you know, get the adequate support for what was really going on at the time. Because you know, the reason why we don't open up is because we don't feel safe. It's because we feel like we're going to be judged. It's because we feel like we're not good enough, right? So creating safe spaces in a very unsafe world at the moment is probably one of the most powerful things we can do.
Yeah.
It really is.
I totally agree. I totally agree. And I think that's so beautiful, sharing that story. So beautiful. Because I know of a lot of new mums, and there's a lot of pressure, you know, like when your baby doesn't do a certain thing at a certain time, and especially when you're used to living a life, and then you're living this other life with this kid, and you're not sure of yourself, and I think that just highlights the fact that the more that we can be okay with ourselves, the more we can just allow our baby to be where they're at and just be in that emerging process. Like, really trust life. Life has been raising people for millions, thousands of years, not millions, but do you know what I mean? Like, life goes on and life works with us. And if we can just step back and trust that emerging process to unfold and be present with that as much as we can, and just trust that it's all going to be okay, and that they're showing up exactly how they need to. And in fact, how they're showing up is informing you of what you might need to do next, right? Use it as it's a key. This is informing me of what I need to do next, but not because I'm not doing it well enough, just because life does inform us, and we can't really read those signals unless we're present, you know. And like you said before, Aly, I love that when you said the joy and the fun, you know, like I love playing games, and I still play games with my daughters and my sons and my mum. Like, we still play games, but I was never one to play with dolls, right? I didn't used to like playing with dolls. So when my daughter used to come to me and ask me to play with her dolls, if I'd said yes, I would have been abandoning myself, and I would have not enjoyed it and been resentful, and I wouldn't have been present. So I used to say to her, go and ask your dad to play with the dolls, because he used to like that, right? And I would say, I'll play a game with you though. I'm happy to play this. So I found things that I like to do, and I think this is good for mums. Like, we do things to keep them happy, but it's like, if I can find something that I love to do too, like I used to love building cubby houses. Like, that was my thing. And I'd have sheets everywhere. And so because I love doing that, I was really with my kids when I was doing it. I was present. But I found things that I love to do. And I think that's, that's super helpful too for mums. Like, I had to sort of work that one out. So.
And I think what's important to know for everybody, because I do a lot of work in health and well-being, and I'm a health and wellness coach, the rest is as important as the action. And that's such an important thing to know. And that's important to know from the highest level executive CEO that I could work with, to the mom at home I could work with, to the students in college that I work with. I work with people across the board. Because when we don't rest, we don't give ourselves time to kind of recalibrate. Our creative energy, our amazing ideas, our inspirations, they come during the rest period. That's when we're really, truly inspired. There's a time for action and there's a time for rest. Look at the seasons. There's spring, summer, autumn, and winter. Look at nature, how she cycles through every year. She has her summer where she's in full bloom. She has her autumn where she's starting to shed. Winter, the gestation period for full introversion and rest. And then spring, where she's being reborn again. We have seasons too. We're not meant to keep going. That's when we get burnt out. That's when we get overwhelmed. That's when we snap. That's when we become rigid. That's when we become inflexible. That's when we become a nightmare to be around. And your children are your biggest indicators of how you're feeling, because your central nervous system mirrors theirs and vice versa. So if your children are having meltdowns, or when Dr. Gabor Mate said to me when my toddler was having a meltdown all the time, he said, he's mirroring your central nervous system. It's you that needs to check in. In that moment was like, that was such a big concept to me. Like, remembering that's about a decade ago. Such a big concept. It was like, and also a concept of, it's my fault. The victim mentality, right?
Yes, yeah. We don't want that though. We don't want that. We want,
And immediately we go into defensive. What you're saying, it's my fault. And it's like, no, he's just telling me the truth, that it's my central nervous system. And if I'm activated, or if I'm in fight or flight and my kid is mirroring that, look at that as an opportunity and a gift. So from there on in, I used to look at James, and if he was acting up, I used to go, okay, what's going on in me right now? I need to take a moment. I need to ground myself. I need to take a few deep breaths. There's an amazing breath that I've used for years, the 4-2-6 breath. Breathe in, because not all breath work is the same. Some breath work in the morning is to activate us, right? It's to energize us, right? So not all breath work is the same. So understand that. So 4-2-6 is a beautiful count that helps to bring you out of the sympathetic into the parasympathetic, into the rest, digest, and create mode, right? So we breathe in for 4, we hold for 2, and we breathe out for 6, and repeat that for a couple of minutes. Beautiful, beautiful breath to do at night if people finding it hard to wind down at night. If you've been watching your phone, if you feel like you can't settle, do the 4-2-6 breath at night. Really powerful, beautiful way to just send a signal of safety to your system, right? It's okay, all is well, I am safe. So it's okay, all is well, I am safe. I teach my clients to connect with their heart on a daily basis, and to always place a hand on your heart, because we can bring our awareness to our heart to activate it, but through the power of touch. And by doing this, we're training our system to understand that this is my signal for safety. And therefore, when you go out into the world and you're activated by a conversation, by something your kids do, by an email that you get, by someone at work, place your hand on your heart, and your body will instantly recognize, this is my signal for safety. All is well. I can feel my system completely relaxing now.
Yes.
I've been doing it for years and years and years. And my system knows that when I place my hand on my heart, it's okay. All is well. All is well.
Oh my God, Aly, that's so beautiful. I feel like we've just uncovered so many juicy gems today. Thank you so much. That's such a great conversation. I'm going to end it here, so it's a little bit shorter than normal, or sometimes longer than other ones. But anyway, it's a great place to end.
Yeah, but just remembering that you hold all the power, right? So to just, investigate what is really going on here. It's not really about the guilt. There is always something going on that's deeper, and your emotions just want to be seen, like anything else, just like you. There are different parts of you that just want to be seen. And when we allow them to be seen and we accept them for what they are, they generally pass through. They're on their journey, and they will continue on their journey. So allow them to go on their journeys instead of keeping them trapped in your body. Nobody likes to be trapped. Right? None of us like to be trapped. So allow them to free them to move on. That's what I'm always saying to people. Thank you so much for having me again. It's such a pleasure to have this conversation with you.
Thank you, Aly. That's awesome. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.